Nice to walk up after you see yourself on camera, right?
Yeah, you're always surprised by what you sound like, right? You're always, is that what I sound like?
Yeah.
But I guess it is.
So I am excited for this discussion because, like I said, this is my background. Thank you, John, for letting me sort of kick this off. But it's sort of around programmatic, but I think what would be helpful is to level set because there are lots of different definitions. And so how does the Trade Desk define programmatic TV?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and I think we're going to kick off a bunch of conversations around this. But even before doing that, just really quickly about my role at the Trade Desk. I'm a director of TV partnerships, and so what that means is I spend about half of my time working with our publishers, unblocking supply and bringing it into our ecosystem so that our buyers, marketers, can then target against that inventory. But the other half is spent working closely with those buyers, making sure that their needs are met in our platform. And what I've noticed from those meetings over the past 5 years, over and over again, what I've noticed is when you say the word programmatic, eyes start to glaze over, right? Traders or execution-oriented folks in the room will jump up and be like, let's talk about programmatic. But the TV buyers in the room say, well, this isn't really to me, I don't need to talk about this. And I think what we've tried to move away from as the Trade Desk is thinking about programmatic as one of the things on your marketing plan. Programmatic is just a vehicle for execution. It's an ability for you to take your buys wherever they may be, cross-channel, cross-publisher, put them into one place as a marketer, and then allow you to target, measure, and report against your audience across the open internet. And I think that's a really important level set because it's very different than what it probably was 5 years ago before the connected TV revolution. And I think you heard me sort of wax poetic about the big challenge for our industry, and we'll talk more about that, Tameka, in this conversation. But we have so much more power at our disposal than we've ever had by virtue of being able to buy digitally and get that return path signal. We now have a relationship with the consumer on the other side of the glass, and we've never had that before, right? We just had to spray into a GRP or spray nationally and sort of pray that they made their way into the funnel.
So I think I'm gonna go off script a tiny bit. I think that's an interesting, I don't know, I just think that's an interesting way to categorize it because the nature of programmatic is such that there's practically no relationship between the buyer and the seller. There's a relationship between like the 17 other platforms that sit between them. So I think it's interesting that as we try to programmaticize TV, that there's this shift, that there's this idea of a shift back to the consumer. But so you said your definition of programmatic has changed. What are you guys seeing on your platform that sort of has kind of driven that?
I think we've seen a ton of TV money come through. And I think when I started at this company 5 years ago, that wasn't the case. We started talking about CTV loosely, and that was a really big strategic sort of goalpost we were moving towards. But now we are a connected television platform. And so the way that we talk about it is very different. When we were selling display and online video, those are very different channels. And I think the way that we were transacting on those was very different. When we're buying TV primarily, everyone in this room is in some capacity affiliated with TV sales and buying. It's just a very different channel. There's more scarcity, it's more premium, there's more attentiveness. And so we've had to change the way that we think, talk, and advertise programmatically at our company in order to fit into that. If we just came in and said, hey, we're the tech folks and we understand everything about auctions, I wouldn't be up here right now. None of you would be listening to me, to the extent that you are. But no, none of you would be listening to me because you wouldn't care. That's not how TV works. TV is a relationship-based experience, both from the buy and the sell side. And it's really about the consumer. It's about the brand. It's about the message. It's about the story that you're able to tell.
So when we prepped for this, you had talked about a couple of interesting shifts, and I think it's important to get into that because with all of the competition, with all the different new sort of ad-supported FASTs and AVODs, and that TV is moving away from sort of a scarcity model into, you didn't want to use this word, but I'm like a glut of supply, right? Like there's way too much inventory, and how does that then shift how buyers have to behave?
Yeah, I think that even ties back to your first question, which is that the shift in the way that we think about programmatic. And what I mean by that is, I wouldn't say there's a glut of supply, but I would say there's a lot more competition. And this isn't going to be new to anyone here. The streaming wars have been widely documented. I'm not going to say anything novel about the streaming wars here, but we did see this proliferation of every single content owner just tripping over themselves to be the 8th largest streaming platform in the ecosystem, right? Slap a plus name on the slap a plus on the end of your name and jump into the streaming ecosystem. And that created a lot of competition. There's a lot of competition for eyeballs, a lot of competition for attention. But if you look at the life cycle of display, online video, mobile, all of these channels, they go from nascency to heavy competition to lack of differentiation to commodification. And I think there's a healthy fear that that could happen to CTV, but we're not seeing that, and we don't anticipate ever seeing that, because there's a lot of things that sort of constrain that. There's no way that connected television can be as prolific as display, for two reasons. One, attentiveness. You really can't scroll through 15 shows in 10 minutes and then be done with your experience like you can on the web or in a mobile app. And then two, tolerance. Customers are not going to tolerate more ads than content. In fact, they have a really light ad load tolerance right now. And so I think that means that this market is going to stay a supply scarce market, which means that there's a lot more at play than just throw it into a platform, buy against it on audience, and you're done. I think that those are important principles, and we'll talk more about that, but I don't think that it's going to go the way of display or online video, where you're not going to be able to differentiate on premium content, you're not going to be able to differentiate on measurement, on some of these things that we've talked about all weekend.
So how are you counseling buyers to sort of make the most of this market that has a ton of options, but maybe not all of them being premium?
I think thinking about each of these things as a different part of your overall plan. And I think that's how we've always bought TV in the past, which is, hey, each and every one of these publishers that we work with has a different place and reaches a different audience. I think what's changed, and I think you and I talked about this sort of in the run-up to this, but what's changed is content always used to be a proxy for audience, right? You would say, well, I think people that want a luxury timepiece probably live a life of luxury. And if you live a life of luxury, you probably have a lot of leisure time. If you live a lot of leisure time, you probably golf. Let's put Rolex ads on the Golf Channel. And that was a really good way to target when that's all that you could do. But what if we could just tell you, hey, we have a pretty good idea of who's in the market for Rolexes and Patek Philippe's. Then we could just go target them. And what if it turned out they were watching HGTV? What if it turned out they were watching Sling? What if it turned out they were watching on any host of things rather than just the Golf Channel? They definitely are watching the Golf Channel, or Rolex is wasting a lot of money. But they're watching a lot of other things, right? And so making sure that we're counseling buyers to be cognizant of that and to think about buying in an all-up sort of platform-based. Denise mentioned this and sort of front-ran me in a great way, which is that we counsel buyers, if you bring more of this in, the more that you bring into a programmatic execution vehicle, the more that you're able to do. The machine gets smarter. You're able to match your buys on NBC with your buys on Condé Nast and your buys downstream for display retargeting, all of those things, so that the marketing funnel is no longer awareness at the top, and we hope that it makes its way sort of over here to the actual consideration and intent. Instead, you can do it all at once.
But I think there's a push and pull there, because we've heard here kind of repeatedly people, I think earlier this morning, saying we don't have to get into the precision piece. We don't. It's not. TV is not just meant to be this sort of sharp targeting tool. It can also be brand at the same time. So how does your platform allow for both that precision targeting, which may actually not even be super precise, because also what people are saying is the measurement isn't there, the targeting isn't there, the attribution isn't there, but also allow them to sort of achieve the brand goals they're trying to achieve.
So I think there's two questions embedded in there, and I'll answer them in reverse order, which is the measurement isn't there, the targeting isn't there. And I think if you lump in TV into one big category, that's true, and that may never change, right? It's always going to be hard to measure linear TV, addressable somewhat easier, and then digital, full-blown digital TV is a lot easier to measure. If you put them all into one bucket, it is difficult. But in the digital side, you can measure a lot. The problem is, and we talked about this yesterday on our measurement panel that everyone but Kelly wanted to be on, we talked about this, which was, you kind of have to give something to get more. But if you're a network or a cable company, you really don't want to let execution or data out of your platform. And then to your first question, is there a space for brand versus performance? I think that's what's so exciting about this retreat that we're all on together, but also just the space. The last 5 years is a once-in-a-generation shift from linear to digital, and what that really means is the merging of brand and performance marketing. We've never really seen this at this scale. We've seen it in print journalism, but never in media. I think you're right. We can't just say, great, let's just do everything performance-based. There's a reason that Home Depot wants to be featured on College Game Day. And it's not just that Home Depot thinks that every single person improving a home watches college football. I mean, you can't really improve your home and watch college football. The Saturdays are when you improve your home. So there's a reason for all of those things, and we counsel buyers that. We do the same thing. There is a place and time for these deals and these deal structures that have always existed, but even within those, we can use the data that comes appended to that. If you're buying on a guaranteed basis, you can see the measurement and reporting that comes with that and make even those buys smarter just so that you're getting better as you go.
So Trade Desk is a buy-side platform. Your job is to counsel the buyers, but we are in a room arguably full of media owners and sellers too. How do you talk to them and sort of what's the pitch to them? Why should they play?
It's a really good question, and I think one that we've started to sharpen our answer to, and also one that puts a little bit of onus back on us. So when you go out, and when a publisher goes out and they sell on a guaranteed basis, whether that's an insertion order or a sponsorship level deal, something that's at a fixed price, there's a big transaction going on there, right? They're trading this inventory for a guarantee in return, and you get your price fixed as a part of that bargain. Those still run through our platform, and we see what people would have paid for that inventory if it hadn't already been allocated. So say Home Depot runs a deal through ESPN, that gets pushed through our platform, but we can see what Lowe's might have paid for that, or what, any insert whatever advertiser would have paid for that, and it's way above those CPMs that they're fixed at. And so what we've started counseling our sellers, and what we could do a better job of is, hey, this is the money you left on the table. Now, the other side of that is that's what we've kind of always known about upfronts, right? We're going and making this big bargain. Yes, you could get more money, or you could get none, right? And in a soft market right now, if you get no money, or like a really high CPM, and you could split the difference, you might just take that and go home. And I think that's where our side of the equation, the SSP and the DSP side, can be much better about counseling and engaging with our publisher partners to say, hey, look, we just did this massive deal with you guys, and it turns out you could have made 15, 20, 50, 100% more money if you had done it decisionable, so that over time, instead of the reserve going first, you actually have the programmatic going first because that's the highest premium on the CPM, and then the reserve is the backfill. We're a long way away from that. We may never get there, but I think that's the way that the Trade Desk sees the world.
My last question is, do you have any, I'm going to take a page from John. Do you have any predictions for what we'll be talking about from this perspective next year or the year after?
One easy one, I think. I don't think Netflix is going to sell out at $65 CPMs. I don't think that advertising is a light switch and you can just turn it on and then you're just the biggest advertiser in history. They are going to be a threat, and we're all looking at them over our shoulders. It's provided a ton of impetus that John mentioned in his panel. And then the other one is, I think, as we're entering these sort of headwinds, I think that we tend to see a push on lowercase e efficiency, not in terms of CPMs, but in terms of making your marketing dollars work for you. But as consumers sort of go, and then eyeballs go, and then dollars follow afterwards, the dollars haven't flowed into the streaming space at the rate the eyeballs have. And so it's an arbitrage opportunity. For a media buyer, you can go purchase inventory in the digital space. It doesn't feel like a discount, but it is a discount right now, because I promise you, in 2 years, and 3 years, and 4 years, when we're talking about this, we're going to be talking about, man, I wish I had bought it and built out a strategy in 2022 at the Beet Retreat, rather than waiting till now when everyone's trying to get into digital and it's too late.
Thanks, Jake.
Of course.